what's up? It's your girl Ashley, and you are listening to It Was by Faith podcast, where the more you listen, the stronger your faith grows. With that being said, go ahead and grab your notepad and let's get started. Today's topic is navigating transitions. Now, before we dive into that, I want to give the definition of transition. Transition is the process or period of changing from one state or condition to another. When I think about transition, two words come to mind: excited and scary at the same time. And the reason I say that is because think about your transition from childhood to adulthood, right? We were all super excited to become adults. But then as we slowly started to seek into being adult and like having adult-like responsibilities, that's when like the scary part started to sink in for me. Like, okay, I'm about to start paying my own bills. I need to find a stable job. I need to find a career. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need to be able to take care of myself. Oh, I'm in a relationship now. What happens if I get pregnant? Like, all of that stuff for me, when I thought about all that stuff, it was scary. And I'm going to keep it 100. It was. I remember when I was younger, like, I just couldn't wait to be an adult. And honestly, I couldn't wait to be an adult because I couldn't wait to not have to ask for permission to do certain things. I just thought the adult life was it, right? Because as a child, you don't know the full details of what adults go through, because a lot of times if y'all mama like mine or my family, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't know how much the bills are. You don't know what they're struggling with. You don't know the financial things that's happening in your house. All you know is you come home to a house, you got to do your little chores. Your mama keep a roof over your head. You got nice clothes. You're able to do this and do that. But you don't know the deep part of the adulthood. And so all I looked at first was I can't wait to be an adult. But then after becoming an adult, I'm like, whoa, what a manual. And so that's why I feel like when we go through transitions, we should start within, because when you start within and you check when you check your perspective on things, because I think your perspective, the way you view things, is from the inside. So either something has happened or someone has said something to make you have that view, to make you view things the way that you view it. And so I started my transition last year I said to myself that I was kind of tired of just the same old, right? Year after year, same mindset, living the same lifestyle. I wanted some change. Like, don't get me wrong. Different transitions have happened over the course of my life. And when I say transitions, I became a mom of one. I became a mom of two. I got married. I got a new position at work. So I navigated those transitions. And although I'm not trying to discredit those type of transitions, because I know we all have been there, but this transition was personal for me. And some ways that I navigated that was checking myself, checking my heart. And so that's why I say transition starts from within, because I had to reevaluate my whole thought process and my perspective. That was the first thing. And it was the hardest thing to do, because everything that I had learned or everything that I knew surrounded around the way I thought, surrounded around my perspective. And so in order to unlearn those things, I had to call on God. Like, I had to lean towards God. I had to develop a relationship with Him, because I had been there before where I wanted to become a better person. But because I was surrounded around and had the influence in my life of the world, the only other thing different was God, if I can be honest. And so I made up in my mind that I was going to develop a closer relationship with God. Then I also took inventory of the people, places, and things that I surrounded myself with. I began to change the things I watched on TV. I began to change the things that I listened to. I began to change the people that I followed on social media, because I knew it was time for me to unlearn who I had become if I wanted to become who God has called me to be. Because honestly, I was who Ashley wanted to be. And I just knew that I was tired of the cycles, and I was tired of going through the same thing after same thing after same thing, and not feeling like I was evolving or living up to my best potential, or my living up to my best self. And so I began to change. Like I began to just ask God to help me change. I started reading. So the first book that I read that was life-changing to me was Atomic Habits. Actually, that wasn't the first book. I think last year I read this book. Man, I cannot think of the name of it. But in this book, it talked about how we were programmed from childhood. And believe it or not, even from a very young age, when you couldn't even talk, the things you heard and the things you saw, it has an impact on the person you are today. And so in this book, it talked about us needing to reprogram ourselves. And so as I'm thinking about my transition, and I read that book, I'm going to get the name. I'll probably put the name in the description, because I really can't think of it now. And I think I read that book last year. This whole transition to me becoming a better version of myself started last year. And I want to thank my bishop, Henry Fernandez, over at the Faith Center, because last year our church motto or theme was the year of transition. And man, that New Year's Eve sermon touched me, and it prompted me to say, okay, it's time for a transition. And in this transition, it's only me versus me. And that helped me navigate it, because during that time, or during this time of last year, I was being very intentional about the things that I fed my spirit. And that was one way that I navigated through this transition, is being intentional with what I watch, what I hear, where I go, what I entertain. Because I've identified that stuff had an influence on my perspective of life and the way that I viewed things. And so after I read that book, it wasn't easy. Like, I don't want y'all to think that I've completely transitioned. I feel like transition and evolving and changing is a constant thing, something that you should always be looking to do. But that was a start. And that book was a start of me helping. Then I had to go through and change up my social media. Whatever you spend a lot of time on, like I say, the things you listen to mostly, evaluate that. So I had to go through my social media. I started unfollowing certain people, not listening to certain things, just really like being intentional. I only wanted to feed my spirit and my soul things that was pushing me and changing my perspective. And so one of the things I had did that I hadn't done in a while was I bought me a Bible. I bought me a Bible because I knew that if I wanted to really transition, I had to incorporate God. So I bought myself a Bible, and in the Bible, I titled it "To the Old Me versus the New Me." I started to read devotionals. Let me tell you, I grew up in the church, and a lot of the stuff that I'm reading now, I remembered, but that stuff wasn't in the front of my memory. It was like in the back of my memory, right? To where it had no influence on my life. It had no influence on the way that I think or anything like that. Like every now and then, I would pick and choose parts of the Bible that I wanted to, obey, or I wanted to listen to, or add value to my life. And so I knew that I needed to unlearn that lifestyle. So what I did was I bought a Bible. I didn't know much about a Bible. Like I used to Google stuff. What are scriptures for fear? What are scriptures for doubt? I would go on in my Bible app on my phone and pick up and read different devotionals based on situations that was going on in my life. And the Bible helped me navigate my transition. Going to church helped me navigate my transition. Being around people who was uplifting me and pouring into me. Being around people. What I actually did was I got a recovery coach. I got a mentor. And so I got a mentor. I started following different people on social media. I joined this one fast. I didn't even know the lady, the girl on there. And she was like, "Oh, I'm going on a fast." So I'm like, "I'm going on a fast too." And she was like, "No drinking, no smoking, no sweets, no this, no that." And I joined her. And during that time, I was seeking God. Like, "God, I need your help. I don't want to be this person anymore. Like, I know that the life that I live and the cycles and the things that I am going through, you did not design for me to go through those. And I don't have the strength or the capacity to overcome these things on my own. So I need you." So I continued to seek the face of God. And so I read the Bible. I read devotionals. Man, sometimes I would read the Bible and don't understand nothing. But that didn't stop me. I'm navigating my transition right now through the unknown. And just by faith in God. Because the more I prayed and the more I seek God and to develop a relationship with Him, when I realized that God was so much more than a genie and just praying for things, but for Him to actually help me to unlearn the things that are not of Him, and for Him to really purify and wipe me clean so that I can learn His will and His ways. Whew. Navigating transition became a lot bit easier. But I still had some of those fears because, like I said, transition starts from within. And so I began to realize that some of the things and some of the ways I used to be were no longer in me. And so fear began to sink back in because now I'm like, I see myself changing right before my eyes on the inner side, right? And I truly believe that what's on the inside of you will automatically show physically. And so now, because I'm not the same Ashley that some of my family members know, or I'm not the same Ashley that my husband know, or I'm not the same Ashley that my friends know, that I'm not the same Ashley that even Ashley know. Now I had to navigate the different versions of myself, right? And one of my biggest things was, how do I get people to understand who I am now becoming? You know, like, how do I, like, you know, like, that's the thing. Yeah. How do I get them to understand who I'm becoming and to treat me as such? And the Holy Spirit said to me, don't worry about them. The more you are in your truth, the more free you feel. And so what I had to do is understand that as I continue to change on the inside of me, it's going to show on my outer appearance. And those of the people that truly love me is going to embrace that. It's going to be happy for me. And it's going to, you know, help me continue along on that journey. And the people who don't get it, they just don't get it. And I started to realize that nothing is by coincidence. Everything is God's divine will and order for you. And so, because I was really nervous, like, man, my appetite for certain things has changed, right? And I really did. And sometimes, if I can be honest, fear seeks in a little bit with, like, if I'm going to be accepted by people. But God constantly remind me that the only approval that I need is His. And so I say that all to say to you that embrace the small changes. Start within. Give yourself grace. Don't worry about what others are going to say or how others are going to feel about you. Just continue to do what is best for you. Stay in the will of God. And to just trust your transition. Ephesians 4:20 through 24, it says, You were taught with regard to your former way of life, to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your mind, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. If you are trying to figure out whether or not if it is time to take off your old self, this is your confirmation today that it is time for a transition. Navigating transition is not going to be easy. The number one source in navigating your transition is God. If you don't know how to do it, like I said, I asked Him, and He was waiting for that, because God began to help me with my transition. I picked up the Bible. I began to read it. Even when I didn't understand it, I read it. I was confused. I read it. I asked God for wisdom. I asked Him for clarity. And I asked Him for guidance. In James 1:5 through 8, it says, if you need wisdom, ask God for it, and He will give it to you. Be sure that your faith is in God alone, and do not waver. Basically, what that is saying is that trust and believe that God is going to give you the wisdom that you need to navigate your transition. And to not waver, it says, because that is like divided loyalty between God and the world. And so that is how I navigated my transition. I identified the things that I needed to unlearn that was not within the will of God, or that just was not attached to the person that I was becoming. Fear is going to seek in, but pray to God to help you navigate even the fears that come against you. And remember that you're never alone. God is always with you, and that the only approval that you need is His. And remember that God will only ever lead you to a life that is perfectly, uniquely, and wonderfully designed to bring you and the others around you fulfillment, purpose, passion, and joy. And that is how I navigated transition. Now, before I end, it is our Girl, It Was by Faith segment. And so I am going to read this testimony to you all. It's a testimony from our sister. Because I had faith in God and knew He could make a way. When I was a little girl, I was mistreated by my family. I was silenced. I couldn't even speak to people. I couldn't look at people in their eyes. I spoke very softly. I remember on 2 different occasions, one when my aunt said that I was going to be a lesbian, and my stepmom said I would be a teen mom. Not that is a problem, or that those are a problem, but it's the way that they said it, in the most condescending way. It was because of that I let myself fall into a deep depression, and I fell for the wrong guy. But as I was praying, and I kept asking God to give me the strength to go through another day, I was able to fight off the guy that almost raped me. I was able to tell him to stop sexually harassing me. And because God is so faithful, and because I was able to survive this, I was able to speak up a little more and not hide myself. I was able to slowly but surely express myself more. I was able to keep going. I am alive and well and can fight the urge of committing suicide in more ways than none. And so, y'all, this testimony, I pray that it blessed you all, because honestly, this was our sister navigating transition, right? And so I thank you for sending in your testimony. Again, don't forget, I want to hear your It Was by Faith testimonies. Go ahead and email me at motivationaltalksash@gmail.com, or you can leave a message right here on Spotify. I pray that this episode helped take your faith to another level. Until next time, remember to always be strong with your faith, because you will be rewarded by Him. That is 1 Corinthians 16:13.